call you guys to order. We have some stragglers, and hopefully we'll be joining to give a very empowering program today, and starting with a great program tonight. Of course, I don't have my program, so I'm going to do this by rote. I want to welcome you all. Today is our Education Day, leading up to our signature Total Quality Franchising Awards banquet tonight, and I promise you guys an entertaining and educating and empowering day. I really want to thank again all of the generous support of our sponsors. This would not be happening at all if it weren't for the terrific support from the companies that we met yesterday, and we'll be talking about them a lot tonight. But right now we have a great privilege to introduce to you the sponsor of our opening session today, which is Janet Quinn, the founder and principal of a very fine marketing firm, ID Agility. And Jan, would you come up and say just a few words? Actually, just before you do, Jan, or on your way up, coming up, we do have a bit of a program alteration for today. Several of our vendors have drawings, and a lot of you dropped off your business cards and whatnot for our drawings. And we decided, because at the time we designated to do the drawings, we didn't have a lot of people in the trade show room, but we decided to do the drawing right after this program. And I don't want to take any time away from the great work of the panelists, so whenever, as they end, we're going to keep you here for 5 or 10 minutes, well, however long it takes to do. I think we have 4 drawings that we need to do. And that will move everything back, whatever that time limit is. So we're going to, we don't want to take time for anything except for you guys at the end, and hopefully we'll catch up when it's all said and done. And with that, I'm very delighted, first of all, to introduce Janet Quinn to welcome you to today's session.
Thank you. Good morning, I'm Jan, and it's great to meet you all. ID Agility is our company. We help our customers be found, and I'm going to give you a whirlwind introduction in just a couple minutes to ID Agility. We launched nationally in 2011. Some of us have been working in the background on this for about a year. Our director of strategy is here today, Maria Oliveras, has been with us since the very beginning. So our mission from the very beginning was to provide the best, most transparent results and the best customer service that a small business owner can find anywhere on the planet. It's a pretty big goal, but we continue to work on that every day. We started the company, all of us coming from marketing and business. We had small business owners, freelancers, people like myself who worked in advertising and communications their whole career. And we get asked all the time, why would you start a company to serve small business? Why weren't you going after the big fish? Well, in those years, it's true today, but even more true 5-6 years ago, in 2010 and 2011, we saw a niche that no one was serving. No one was taking care of the marketing needs of the small business owner. And myself, having spent a career in advertising, we knew that small business owners weren't going to be on the Super Bowl. They weren't going to approve a $500,000 direct marketing campaign, but they needed foundational services. They needed the very basics of any business. Websites that could work, eventually that had to be mobile. They needed advertising that was measurable and transparent. Many of our franchises today have urgent needs online. They have customers in property damage, disaster, healthcare that are searching for them with an urgent problem to solve right now. So you needed advertising that could be proven to solve that problem. They need email to grow their customer base. So what we saw was that we could serve those things and serve them affordably. As part of our mission, we committed to playing the long game. We weren't trying to make the big kill that an advertising agency is looking for. We were looking to build relationships and work with our customers over years. It's been our privilege to be able to do that. We serve several franchise networks and several associations today. We've grown, with hard work and guts. Every year we've been in charge of our business. I took over as the majority shareholder in 2013. Most fun I've ever had. My personal answer to why we chose small business is way more fun. Serving folks that don't just have their skin in the game, they probably have their mortgage in the game. They remind me of my dad. And it's just a lot more fun than serving juggernauts. So that's us, that's Idea Agility. More than anything, I look forward to getting to know more of you. I've had some great conversations, and I hope to have some more today and tomorrow. So thank you so much. Thank you, Bob.
Don't go too far. Okay. All right, let's get this show on the road. Without any further ado, I'd like to bring up Reed Morgan, who is the moderator and speaker of today's session on the 5 top reasons why franchisee associations succeed or fail. And Reed, take it away.
I'd like to ask the panelists to please join me on the stage and be seated. And while they're coming up, good morning, everyone. Microphone must not be working. Good morning. Good morning. All right. We've got a good, energetic program packed for you during this segment. Top 5 reasons why franchise associations fail or succeed. And we've got some very successful franchise association executives with a lot of experience here to talk with you. We're going to discuss the challenges, the pitfalls, the ups and the downs, the to-dos and the not-to-dos about franchise associations, including leadership, mission, communication, marketing, all of the things that are key to making that happen. And what I'd like to do is to introduce the panelists and ask each of them to briefly introduce themselves to you. And when we've done that rotation, then we will actually start the presentation. So we'll start with Robert Einhorn.
All right, thank you. Good morning, everyone. My name is Robert Einhorn, and I'm a partner with the firm Zarco, Einhorn, Sokowski, and Brito, based in Miami, Florida. Our firm was founded 25 years ago by my partner, Robert Zarco, who's here in the front row, and you'll be hearing from him later today. And it's been my honor and pleasure to work with Robert almost 23 years now. We represent franchisees from over 100 or 200 different franchise systems over the years. And mainly it's been dispute resolution, but we also guide franchisees who are considering a franchise opportunity. And we also work with many franchise associations, which is most relevant here today. And I'm very pleased to be with you and to share our experiences with you today. Thank you.
Our next panelist is Chip Rogers. Chip is the president and CEO of the AAHOA, the largest hotel owners association in the world. Chip?
All right, thanks so much, Reed. Glad to be with you here this morning. One of our former chairmen, C.K. Patel, sitting here in the front row. We are AHOA, we are the Asian American Hotel Owners Association, and we've grown from, over the last 27 years, and we've just got a handful of guys who decided to get together in the city of Atlanta to start an owners association to protect themselves, to now having a membership of about 16,600 hotel owners across the country who own almost 1 out of every 2 hotels in the United States. So we're a very large association that is thriving and doing very well, and I'm happy to tell the story today.
Thank you. Our sponsor for this segment, Jan Quinn.
Thank you, Reed. So, hi, you heard a little bit about Idea Agility. So, I'm Jan Quinn. My role in the company is to keep everybody happy. One of the things I've learned is when your employees are happy and you really take good care of them, your customers generally follow right behind that. So we spend a lot of time on that at Idea Agility. On the personal front, I grew up in the Midwest, but I've lived in Portland, Oregon my whole adult life. We love Portland. My early career was high-tech, ad agencies. Some of my long client relationships include Microsoft, Adobe Software, Lucent Technologies, companies like that. I used to be designer when I was a kid, and perhaps the best project I ever produced, my husband and I, years ago, and my ex-husband for a long time, our two sons. They're in their mid-20s, and we're all still in Portland and have a terrific time there. So I am pretty steeped in the Northwest and privileged to serve customers all over the United States.
Thanks, Jen. And finally, but not last, my partner in crime, fellow B&I franchisee, David Alexander.
So good morning. Happy to see everybody here today, all your smiling faces. I want to talk a little bit about leadership today, actually, and I will tell you, one of the keys to leadership is getting, especially in an association, really anything, I guess, is getting an awesome vice president like Reed Morgan that can catch every ball that I drop as the president of the association. So Reed, thank you for all that you do. I am a B&I franchisee. I've actually owned B&I franchises now for, I think, going on 19 years at this point. I'm also somewhat of a serial entrepreneur. I've owned a number of different businesses over the years, and I'm also currently the president of a training company called High Achievers, where we help business owners go to the next level. So really my whole career is about helping businesses just reach that next level of success, be that through B&I or other business interest. Thank you.
Thanks to each of you. Our topic for today, 5 reasons why associations, franchise associations succeed or fail. This panel has a wealth of experience in that, and our discussion with you today is that, a discussion, not a presentation. So I want to encourage your interaction, encourage your questions. Do we have a floor mic, a wireless floor mic? We don't, I'll send one out. So if you have a question, give each presenter a few minutes to make their points, and then they'll ask for your questions. We'll be happy to dialogue, and we'll move along so each gets their fair and equal amount of time. We're going to start with Robert Einhorn, who is going to tackle the concept of the mission of the Franchise Association, what it's going to do or not do based on what your mission is.
Thank you, Reed. In approaching this topic, what we all did was we tried to look at what are the elements of a franchise association. And we identified 5 elements. A mission, which is critical, organization and leadership, resources to maintain the association on an ongoing basis, which ties into continuity and ongoing value so the association can sustain itself. And then the critical element of communications. Communications with membership and communications with the franchisor. And so each of us is going to be looking at a different one of those elements. My topic is mission. You have a very strong group panel here made up of people that have had great success with franchise associations. You're going to hear from them. I come at it from a little different view because I've seen success and I've also seen failure in working with franchise associations. It's very difficult to create a franchise association, and then once it's created, it's very difficult to sustain it. And so when you look at mission, it is critical that the association have a clear mission that's not just focused on one issue. And a lot of associations happen to form because there's some crisis. And it's the crisis which is the triggering event that causes people to come together and create a franchise association. And it's unfortunate that that's the way it seems to work, but that's what often happens. But if the association's mission is based on that crisis, then it's going to be of limited duration, limited utility, and so the crisis cannot define the association. You're going to have difficulty attracting membership if it's just based on crisis, because frankly some people want to avoid conflict, and they don't want to be in an adversarial situation, and they don't want to focus on negativity. And so if the mission is based on crisis, there's going to be problems even getting membership. And of course, you won't have the sustainability once the crisis is over. And so now you won't have an association to face the next crisis. You most need that association. So focusing on what the mission should be for an association that is going to have long-term sustainability and long-term value to its members, it has to be focused on positive results. It has to be focused on growing the brand. It has to be focused on growing profitability. It has to be focused on collaborating with the franchisor to accomplish these goals. Now, we all know there's an inherent tension in the franchise relationship. And that tension is based on the fact that franchisors typically earn revenues off of top-line sales. And the profitability of individual units is of less concern to franchisors. They're more interested in top-line sales, where franchisees are most interested in profitability. And so there is that inherent tension, but the association has to focus on collaborating and focusing on positive goals that accomplish the mutual goals. You have to look at what are the goals of the entire brand. And certainly it's to grow the brand, and it is in the franchisor's best interest to have profitable locations if it ever wants to sell another franchise. So the association needs to collaborate with the franchisor where the goals are mutual and try not to emphasize that inherent conflict. Now, franchisees are able to get leverage in the relationship because they've aligned and because they can speak through the collective and unified voice of a franchise association. And those are the elements that the mission needs to emphasize as to why franchisees are coming together, to align their interests, to focus on growing the brand and growing profitability, and to speak in a unified voice. Franchise associations should also emphasize, as part of the mission, the value of sharing best practices, of getting together with other franchisees who are in the same brand, operating the same type of businesses, and being able to share those experiences. The mission should also emphasize the value of being able to pool resources with other franchisees in similar circumstances. And franchisees can pool resources in areas like marketing. They can pool resources in areas like collective buying. And you have some very sophisticated associations, which you're going to hear, and you probably have already heard from during this program, that have sophisticated buying groups. They do their own marketing. They conduct their own trade shows. They buy things like insurance. And then it also makes sense for franchisees to share resources when it comes to hiring legal counsel. And it's not just about dispute resolution. It's about other issues in the franchise relationship, such as renewal. The franchisor has its ongoing legal counsel, and franchisees, rather than everyone hiring their own lawyers, should get together, pool their resources, and hire competent franchise counsel to deal with ongoing issues which are going to come up, such as a renewal, such as some new development in the franchise system that the franchisor wants to introduce. It makes sense for franchisees to have the same resources as the franchisor in terms of legal talent, but it doesn't make sense for franchisees to go out and do it on their own, because they're going to be duplicating efforts. They're going to be hiring counsel of different skill levels, and one attorney is not going to necessarily know what another attorney was able to accomplish in terms of renewal or something like that, whereas if you all use the same counsel, you're all going to benefit from whatever that same law firm is going to know about that represented the last guy who tried to renew. Franchise systems must evolve like all businesses. And franchisors will be the first to say that a franchise system must evolve. And associations are the vehicle for franchisees as important stakeholders to have a seat at the table when changes are being implemented in the system, and to speak about those changes amongst themselves, and to be able to present a unified voice to the franchisor as to how the franchisees best see those changes being implemented. And the mission statement of your association should focus on that valuable input that you can give to a franchisor, and the valuable resource that you bring to the table by sharing your collective resources, collective efforts to understand the business perhaps better than the franchisor, and be in the best position to have input into those changes. Astute franchisors will recognize the value that an association brings. And the franchisor will actually use the association to its benefit. Rather than as a franchisor implementing changes unilaterally and trying to ram it down the throats of franchisees, an astute franchisor is going to approach change by speaking to the leaders of the association, getting their input, and hopefully getting the association's buy-in. So the association will first vouch for and accept the change. And if the franchisor does that, it's going to be much easier to implement changes in the system. Please.
So what questions do you have, Robert, or comments about that? Yes, sir.
I can be loud. So the only thing that I want to echo what you said, Robert, and I would say to people, make sure that your mission statement has flexibility in it, and I don't mean flexibility to change, but that you can define it different ways, because the one point that Robert didn't touch on is one of the great protections, I think, as many people in this room know, is the Franchisee Association as the aggressor with the franchisor, rather than individuals. You can take cover. And one of the criteria under the law of the Franchisee Association being a plaintiff, for instance, or a claimant in an action, is that there's only 3 things the association has to do to step into that role. But number 1 is that it's part of the mission of the association. And so some sentence about the association advocating for the rights of the franchisees. I know that, and I walk this balance every day. Robert talked about the, not being threatening and supporting the brand, and I agree with absolutely all of that, because you need the very first thing the franchisor reads when he's trying to figure out, he or she's trying to figure out whether or not you're a threat, is what that mission statement says. But you do have to have some ability to say, well, what we meant by that is if we have to go after the franchisor, we can. Because absent that statement in your mission statement, the association actually can't be a plaintiff or a claimant. So draft it in such a way that you have the flexibility to make that claim if you have it.
Yeah, I agree with that, Ron, and I also agree with the point you made, which is that associations actually serve as cover for individual franchisees. And when issues like retaliation come up, it's much more difficult for a franchisor to retaliate against an entire association or even leaders in the association, because the association is there to protect the individuals, and that should be part of the value that an association brings, as opposed to what franchisors can much more easily do, and that's pick off individual franchisees.
Yeah.
How do we decide who to get behind? We've got members, and then one member has an issue, and how do we decide who to get behind, as far as supporting them financially?
I think you have to look at the issue and determine as an association whether it's an issue that will impact all the members or a majority of the members, or is it some isolated issue because that franchisee has some unique problem. So I think that's the way you need to approach it, is this a collective issue or not? Because you don't want franchisees to be taking advantage of the association, and just because they're troublemakers trying to get the association to help them and pay their legal bills or whatever the case may be. So I think that's the right approach, is to measure how collective the issue is.
And would you put that in your mission statement?
I don't think the mission statement needs to be overly detailed. I think, as Rob suggested, it could just be, advocating for the best interests of the franchisees and just some broad, neutral proclamations. And I think you'll leave yourself a lot of the flexibility that you need.
Okay, over here, and then David.
Can I add to that?
Okay, go ahead.
So just a couple other thoughts. We, as an association, had a lot of challenges so far. And what we've done is we have Opportunities and Issues Committee. And so we've made that very well known to our members. And so members take their challenges to that committee. And once that committee reviews those challenges, at that point, if it's a system-wide issue, going back to exactly what he just said, then we refer that over to our investment trust. Some associations call that the legal trust. And so we have trustees that manage the money that we have. And then those trustees will decide if this is in fact something we may need to engage counsel on, or are there other ways to resolve the issue and support the franchisee. So we've developed pretty quickly a fairly sophisticated system to rank, prioritize those issues.
Three quick comment. Just one thing to add. One thing your communications can really help with. Once you make those determinations, we made some of those determinations through surveying our members to determine how widely these issues were spread. One important part of that is to share back with the members transparently why you made those decisions and what really was impacting members, and even to do it in a way that you wanted the franchisor to read it too. It helped even the people who were not getting that issue furthered. It helped them understand where the biggest bang lies.
Time for one more question on this topic, and then we'll move to the
You
next.
mentioned that there were some pretty astute franchisors that actively engaged the association when making decisions. Who are they, and how are they driving success across their system?
Well, I
Where
think
are they hiding?
I'll give one example. I think the NFA, which is the Burger King Franchise Association, after many years of perhaps adversarial relationships with Burger King, they reached such a point of leverage where I think they have a lot of ability to influence changes in that system, and I think Burger King has now reached the point where they're going to the association and they're trying to get the association to agree to changes before they're implementing them. So I think Burger King's come to the realization, astutely, that it's better to first deal with the association before they did things the traditional way, which is to ram it down your throat as a franchise.
That was post city development season, right?
I'm not sure exactly where in the timeline. It was a long road to get to the point where that association is. It's a very strong association now.
There are obviously a lot of details, the devil is in the details, involved with association success and failure. Our panel, as we began to plan for today's discussion with you, wanted to break it down into the large components to begin the discussion and get your feedback from those. And the second of those components that we're going to deal with now, David Alexander is going to address, and that is the component of leadership in a franchise association. David?
I was so busy taking so many notes from Bob, I forgot what was up next. I have 2 pages worth this after your presentation. So actually, I'm going to show you a little video about leadership. This is one of my favorite videos that deals with this topic. I think leadership is actually a very interesting concept. And I think leadership actually goes very much in hand with mission. If you don't have a strong mission, as Bob was just describing, then leadership, quite honestly, can be ineffective. If you don't have a strong vision, then I think leadership could be ineffective. So all these things, I believe, really work together. So before I go any further, I'm going to ask Mike in the back. It's kind of funny, Mike controls the mic, so how about that for an easy way to remember somebody's name? I have Mike play a quick video for us.
If you've learned a lot about leadership and making a movement, then let's watch a movement happen, start to finish, in under 3 minutes, and dissect some lessons. First, of course, a leader needs the guts to stand alone and look ridiculous. But what he's doing is so simple, it's almost instructional. This is key. You must be easy to follow. Now here comes the first follower with a crucial role. He publicly shows everyone else how to follow. Notice how the leader embraces him as an equal. So it's not about the leader anymore, it's about them, plural. Notice how he's calling to his friends to join in. So you take steps to be a first follower. You stand out and create ridicule yourself. Being a first follower is an underappreciated form of leadership. The first follower transforms a lone nut into a leader. If the leader is the flint, the first follower is the spark that really makes the fire. Now here's the second follower. This is a turning point. It's proof the first has done well. Now it's not a lone nut and it's not two nuts. A tree is a crowd and a crowd is news. A movement must be public. Make sure outsiders see more than just the leader. Everyone needs to see the followers because new followers emulate followers, not the leader. Now here come 2 more people and 3 more immediately. Now we've got momentum. This is the tipping point and now we have a movement. As more people jump in, it's no longer risky. If they were on the fence before, there's no reason not to join in now. They won't stand out, they won't be ridiculed, and they will be part of the in crowd if they hurry. But over the next minute, you'll see the rest who prefer to stay part of the crowd, because eventually they'll be ridiculed for not joining. And ladies and gentlemen, that is how a movement is made. So let's recap what we've learned. If you are a version of the shirtless dancing guy, all alone, remember the importance of nurturing your first few followers as equals, making everything clearly about the movement, not you. Be public, be easy to follow. But the biggest lesson here, did you catch it? Leadership is over-glorified. Yes, it started with the shirtless guy, and he'll get all the credit, but you saw what really happened. It was the first follower that transformed a lone nut into a leader. There's no movement without the first follower. See, we're told that we all need to be leaders, but that would be really ineffective. The best way to make a movement, if you really care, is to courageously follow and show others how to follow. When you find a lone nut doing something great, have the guts to be the first person to stand up and join in.
You had no idea what you were in for at the beginning of that video, did you? Yeah, I think that's a very interesting example of what I believe probably happens in almost every single case in a franchise association. There's a lone nut. In our case, that lone nut was me. It was nerve-wracking to stand up in front of a handful of my colleagues and say, we need to do this. I didn't know if they would follow along. I didn't know if they wouldn't. I didn't know if I would be the only fool up there dancing. I really just didn't know what would happen. But I quickly had a group of people follow along, and all of a sudden, literally in our first year as an association, we went from the idea to representing over 60% of our system, and have already had a very successful franchise contract negotiation with the franchisor. And by the way, we're still not even technically recognized. I mean, we are an FDD and whatnot because we have to be. But there's not a real close working relationship there. But it's interesting. The CEO and I have lots of conversations. We go on runs together. We're collaborating as much as we can until he makes the decision that maybe we're not his worst nightmare and possibly helping fix a lot of things in the system. You know, that's certainly our goal. And that's part of our mission. You know, we want to be a collaborative force for good and help our franchisees, help represent our franchisees, and collaborate at a very high level with the franchisor. But I thought it would be kind of neat, maybe just have a quick discussion around that video, because I think there's a lot of truth to that. I don't think it's about the president of the association. I don't think it's even about the leadership team inside the association. I think it's about the members. I think it's about getting the members involved, getting them engaged, getting them excited, not only around the battles. You know, it's easy to get excited around the battles, right? But maybe it's not quite as easy to get excited when the battles aren't happening. But that's where that continuity of the association comes into place. And I have no idea, as far as our association goes, you know, we're just in our first year, so we're going strong, things are going good. I don't know what our continuity will look like. I believe it will be pretty good, because we have some committee chairs set up that are really working on providing value for the members through things like collective buying, through things like sharing marketing ideas and all that. So we're working on all that, while we're still engaged in a couple of battles. So I think you have to have a strong leader. You got to have, more importantly, you got to have those strong followers. So I thought I might just open it up for a couple of questions around leadership in an association, or discussion, around that video. If there's something in that video you thought was kind of interesting and you want to go deeper on that, we can do that as well.
First of all, I'd love to know what they were smoking.
I have no idea.
As far as figuring out the committee chairs, as far as what each committee, is responsible for, do you have any guidance on, how many you want on your committee and what the functions are?
Yes, so that's actually something I would, are you guys affiliated with the AAFD? Okay, that's something I would actually take to them. They have guidelines around all of that, what the committee chairs do, functions of committee chairs. And basically what we did, we looked at the committee chairs that they have, and then we emulated that. And how we did it is, for example, the committee chair on marketing just happens to have a marketing degree. The committee chair on strategic alliances just happens to do that in a prior career. So literally, as we kind of looked at the chairs, we looked within our system. And interestingly, that even helped us recruit a couple of members, I think, because we talked to people that we knew had that strength in their background and asked them to step into those roles. And they've done very well. And as far as the officers in our association go, and our board, we just try to support those people in their roles. And every single board meeting, we put out a call for help because we want everybody engaged. We want as much engagement as possible. And so the committee chairs right now, because we're still very young as an association, so the committee chairs right now are really actively working on getting people involved in their committees, delegating more out. Because if everybody does a little bit, we'll get a lot done. We don't want it to all fall in the shares. We don't want it to all fall on our officers. I certainly don't want it to all fall on me. So we're very active in trying to get people engaged. Did that answer your question?
Yes, thank you.
David, you might want to talk about the very first couple days of when people were getting together, and there weren't any selected designated people of who was doing what and what the angst felt like in people's stomach. And go back to that time, I'm sure there's people in this audience that can appreciate some of that, because it's not a slam dunk from the get-go, and how different personalities floated to the top that was amiable enough to make the right decision at the right time.
Yeah, that's a good point. Al, by the way, is a B&I franchisee, and he was there when I was a shirtless dancing guy going through my presentation with a select group of people saying that we needed to do this. That was a very interesting time for us. I mentioned yesterday in one of my statements that I wish we had done this 10 years ago. Now that we've done it, I don't understand why we had such a fear around doing it. Because the fact is, an association truly should be collaborative. It truly should be there to support and grow the entire system. And I think part of our job is trying to turn this fear that we all have on its head. Because we're scared to death as an association, form an association. What's the franchise order going to do? Is there going to be retribution for the franchise order? Now the flip side is the franchisors are just as scared as we are, that we're going to form an association. So everybody's scared to death. And so it's almost like if there's a way to get new franchisors just to embrace this from the get-go, think how powerful that would be. Think how powerful those systems would be. But you gotta work through that. You gotta ask people to help. Quite honestly, when we started our association, there were a couple of people that I thought to myself, they were on like the list of they will never join and never be a part of this ever. And then they were like the most active people from the get-go. Just kind of, some of you sitting in the front row, you probably know what I'm talking about. And then there's others who we thought would be completely all in, and they think it's a union and don't want to have anything to do with it. And it's just really interesting how all that plays out. And one of the things I'll warn you too, and this is something I've had to get comfortable with, there will be franchisees in our system that will just never be a part of this. For whatever reason. Maybe it's apathy, maybe it's, we actually heard one person say, well, you don't need to join that, they're going to do all the work for us all. That made me really happy, by the way.
Yeah.
That's a very powerful statement. But you're gonna have folks like that, and that's okay. You know, you can't get hung up, you know, over those types of obstacles.
David? By the way, I was one of those people that could think of the all-in. And
I wasn't gonna throw you out, by the way, but now that you said it.
I wonder if you could share the magic of pretty much the confidence and the decision to be all-in financially to charter before we even had the numbers of members to make that easy.
Yeah, that's actually really an interesting thing to point out. We may have possibly had a little easier go of forming our association than most. We actually do still do actually, a group of franchisees who meet together, work together, help grow each other's businesses, and we've met together and worked together separately for years. And it was that group of people actually that kind of initiated this, and that group of people actually made the decision to go ahead and fund our association fully right from the get-go. Bob has said many times that we're one of the few associations that literally like chartered and became active with AAFD overnight, and that was literally quite true. I mean, we sent all the funds necessary to get our charter practically before we had our first member, just because we wanted to get there. We didn't want to go through a year-long formation period. We wanted to get there very quickly, get ourselves organized, so that we could promote it effectively to our groups. And I tell you, the financial strength is absolutely key. Now, in an association, not only do you need to have the numbers, strength and numbers in your association, but you have to have a financial mechanism to fight for yourself in the cases you need to fight. You need to have a financial mechanism to collaborate. You need to have a way to get your negotiators or your board members around you. So you have to have strong finances as an association. A story was shared yesterday that kind of broke my heart, about a franchisee that got all the way to the end of, I can't remember exactly who it was or what, but all the way to the end of this journey, the franchisor had threw the towel in because they just ran out of money. I suspect that happens with associations a lot. So one of the things that we did is we formed an investment trust immediately, right after we formed, and we currently have over 75% of our membership as a part of our investment trust, and we are funded significantly at this point. So we're prepared, we're ready, for whatever comes our way. My hope is maybe we won't have to use a lot of those funds. Well, actually, we already have had to use a lot of those funds. And my hope is that doesn't continue, and the franchisor realizes that these folks are well positioned and well prepared, which right now gives us a little leverage for conversations and negotiation with the franchisor. It's my desire and hope that at some point we don't have to use that leverage anymore, and at some point maybe they realize we can probably help them solve some problems.
I really regret that we picked elements of this topic that nobody has much interest in. But having covered only 2 of our 5, we'll move on now to the 3rd category, and that's an important one because it deals with taking mission, taking the leadership, and turning it into communication and marketing, and that's Dan's bailiwick. So we're going to ask her to talk with you about that some, and then field your questions before we go into the final 2 big items that have to do with long-term success.
Thank you so much, Rick.
Reed, thank you. Thank you, David. So in thinking about all the things I want to share about communications, I was thinking about what could I tell you about myself that would relate to this and help you to just know me a little bit. And I realized that everything my dad taught me is what I'm using right now in marketing and in my franchisee representation of the Service Master Owners Association. My dad was not the kind of dad to teach you how to swing a hammer or nail a nail, but he was a very successful corporate guy, and he taught me business, and he especially taught me communications. He especially taught me that at any issue that I felt strongly about in business, I needed to outthink how the other guy thought. He would say my employer, and today I put client for my own business in there, or I put franchisor in it when I'm speaking with my board about the issues we need to work on. He taught me how to speak up, and he also taught me, he said, this will be the hardest lesson, and it's the one I'm still working on, when not to say anything at all. And so it has been our privilege as ID Agility to serve the Service Master Franchise Owners Association since before it began. In 2015, we had a very strong founder, our longtime customer from Kansas, who owned a Restore franchise, very large, and he worked tirelessly to found the Owners Association. Service Master as a corporation, they own several brands. The Service Master Clean and Restore brands are not their largest, but the entire brand had been gone back public for the second time and really been bought by Equity Finance. So big changes were on the horizon. There was a lot of concern. And Jerry Winkley worked to found the association and worked immediately with the AAFD. We got to know the AAFD right away too in the spring of 2015. Couple opportunities immediately with the franchisor to communicate. We built a website for the association, one that could inform members and be transparent while at the same time working with the franchisor. The mission of the service, I thought that was a great point, Robert. The mission of, and I'm paraphrasing, but of the association is to provide a voice to franchisees everywhere so that franchisees and the franchisor can work for the betterment of the brand. When we launched that website, we did it for the association at their annual Service Master Convention. And to be allowed to do that, we needed to have the corporate attorneys sign off on the website. And it blew them away that we sat live with their counsel and the attorney on the phone and having had his input already. And any little change they needed, we made it live. Maria, our director of ops, and I were sitting there around the table with them, and the website that we were going to promote at the Franchisors Convention and get a ton of members that way, explain our story there, we made sure the franchisor was bought in right then. It shocked them a bunch. The next opportunity that really we realized we could help Jerry with right at the beginning is we needed to email market to reach all of the members and to get that membership up. The original board each had a little list here or a little list there, but working with a professional marketing group like ours, who had served these franchise owners as their marketing partner for years, we not only had our own lists, we could build lists. We could do that professionally in ways that our busy owners and board members can't. So from the very beginning of our association, ID Agility has been responsible for building what we call the prospect lists. Where are all those owners across the United States? And really, how can we score those lists to understand who are the biggest franchisees? So we began from the beginning to stay in touch with email, to keep the lists separate, and to produce transparent data so we could understand who was responding and who needed to be contacted and so forth. Once we started getting the word out, over about the first year and a half or so, something kind of ironic happened. I think some of you have already experienced this in your own associations. The Service Master Owners Association had tremendous success. They negotiated some very big issues, and they won some big concessions. They dramatically decreased renewal fees. They had a big impact on the licensing fees that they have to pay when a current good standing owner wants to buy a secondary franchise. And the issues that were most meaningful to owners, they won big. They were so happy. They felt like they went back to sort of the pitfall. Well, clearly, all we need now is word of mouth because our owners really get it, that this stuff is really important. So we sent a few emails from letters from the president explaining what these successes were, and then the board went kind of quiet, and guess what? That huge membership we built began to drop off. So late last year and this year, we had a new board come in. Michael Demeter is here. He's our president of the Service Master Franchise Owners Association, and our treasurer, Mike Mack, is here. I think you'll hear from Mike in a little bit. One of the things the new board was committed to was re-engaging members and really over-communicating with them. I personally give a lot of credit to Mike, who became our liaison. So as the communications partner, he vowed to be the one liaison that can keep us on track. And really our job is to offload our board members from the big burden of having to communicate with such a large base of people. They're all busy, of course, running their businesses. So this year, at the very first year, we started with a communications plan. We went back to basics so that in that plan, we could agree up front with the board. How often are we going to communicate? What are the topics that right now, at least in the beginning of the year, are the most important to our owners? And where can we use our partner ID agility to not just offload the execution, but even to do the ghostwriting and to help the board member who could just give us a little bit of a flavor of what he wanted. We could pop out a quick draft and make sure he approved it, and then go ahead and execute the campaign. So those things have been really helpful this year. I wanted to be sure too that the issues of transparency, when you asked how can you be sure that members know, or that you decide as a board on the right issue, I mentioned it quickly, but what we've discovered with our members is they do want quite a bit more than just have their own issues solved. They want transparency. They just want to hear from the board, and they want to know why decisions are made. They also, in many, many cases, like almost any business, whether it's a franchisee association or it's a high-tech company, there's a very small part of our owners or of the customers of any business, maybe 20–30%, that make a large line share of the profits. And that is certainly true in the ServiceMaster Franchisee Association. So helping our smaller members learn from some of the biggest franchisees in the United States is one of the things we consistently get back, that they want to hear. And we're still learning on that because they're all busy owners, they've got day jobs. But we're exploring and learning ways we can do more with that to make them feel involved and to feel like they're not just giving money for a legal battle, but that they are succeeding even in their businesses with the new software that comes out, the big issues that are impacting their operations. One last comment I want to make and then open it up for questions. Mark, you mentioned yesterday that you are really challenged because your franchisor is kind of building a wall where you have to work through their own volunteer committee of owners. ServiceMaster has dealt with that very effectively. I've been very impressed with Mike and how he's helped us stay brand positive. The ServiceMaster organization, the franchisor, they have a National Franchise Council, is what it's called. They they are an independent group of advisors. They do not have any authority, but they are independent franchisees who meet with the franchisor and get early knowledge of everything coming down the pipe that's going to change. And they advise and try hard to work with them to make them happy, but ultimately they don't have authority. Well, after all those big legal wins, ServiceMaster got much stricter and told our association, you can only work with the National Franchise Council. You can't even contact us, literally. You have to work with the council. Mike and Michael and the board were quite savvy about that. They didn't even blink. They said, okay. And that's what we do. One of the strategies is to recruit the National Franchise Council members of the franchisees around the council and make sure we have as many of them on the board as we possibly can. It's also just to build relationships with them. And what we're doing these days is working very effectively through them whenever and wherever possible. But when it isn't possible, when things fall apart, the franchisor can understand that there's a stick standing behind all of that commitment, and that is the power of our organization. The last thing I'd say is this year in summing up our mission, we even have a tagline. Mike helped us really focus on tagline. We looked at lots of different ones. And nowadays we get our emails open because every single one has our tagline in the subject. It's Service Master Franchisees United. That's what it is. So communications, I'd love to have questions if you have any.
So questions and comments for Jan, okay?
Hey, Rita, I'd like to sneak in a question.
Go right ahead.
So, thank you, Janet. That communication is so key, and for the members, that's what they see is the communications. If they're not getting that, they're not seeing anything. But here's a concern I have as a lawyer. The franchisees need to be able to confidentially communicate. How do you maintain that confidentiality? And so when they're discussing strategy for dealing with the association, that's not getting back to the franchisor.
Great question. Great question. Well, we do a few things. We, of course, highly rely on the AAFD process and all of the issues that they have already worked out. So when we're doing our board meetings, that's confidential. The board meetings happen on conference calls with people all over the country, and minutes are gathered, and those minutes are only shared with board members. Those are not shared transparently. Mike will take it on himself to write a letter from the board about once a month, and we will sum up key issues. But where things are extremely confidential, we keep that very close to the vest. Another thing we do for franchisees that we just added to the website this year that seems very interesting is we are making sure, of course, that there's touch points where independent franchisees can talk to the board confidentially. So we have a simple form on the website which is Talk to Us. And when that individual emails in, it goes in email, secure email, only to board members. And they meet at their monthly meetings to decide who's handling what are we hearing, and all of that stays confidential as well. One of the biggest challenges, as I'm sure you guys have too, is there are franchise owners around the country who have issues that you will never solve. That you have members who will never be willing to be brand positive, or what Robert calls total quality franchising. They really are just dying to have a forum to get out there and fight. And those things won't work. So we can help those folks in confidentially, we can at least chat with them and help them understand the whys behind what we will and will not take on. And we make sure, and I'm speaking for my board here, and I hope that's all right, but my understanding and the way we communicated all this, we will try very hard to help that individual understand, but ultimately his issues will stay confidential with the board through all our communications mechanisms, and that kind of, distress will not be shared publicly. Is that fair? Absolutely. Thank you.
Janet, question. Can you share with us your website address so we can go and look at your website, or if there's any other websites that you've done that we can look at to see how the franchise?
Of course not.
Sure. May I just say, this is clearly the smartest question of the day. Thank you for asking. Our website is our company name, ideagility.com. And Mike Mack is Service Master of Seattle, Maria, right? SM of Seattle? Yeah. That's another, another website you can look at. Furniture Medic.
So does each franchise have, do the franchisees have different websites? Does the association, does any, like, we as the BNI Association wanted to have a website to communicate with the other franchisees?
Yes, ma'am.
Do you have that?
Of course. So the Service Master Franchise Owners Association, their website that we built and maintain is smfoa, their initials, .org. And, right. And just a small aside too, one thing we've been able to do there is use that as PR with your franchisor. So we're going to share transparently. We're going to, make it clear how you reach board members, how you talk to us confidentially, how you understand our mission, and even literally where the board members are from. But we do it in a way that we're messaging directly to the franchise owner.
Okay. My other question is, do you do a newsletter to the franchisees?
We do monthly email and currently twice a month.
So is that in a newsletter format?
I wouldn't call it a newsletter so much as very targeted communications. One is specifically updates what's new, and one is directly from a board member. And I mean, it's an email, but it's the input that the board
So it's kind of in a letter format or a bullet point format as far as
absolutely, absolutely.
not a newsletter per se as far as.
Right, no, it's not. And then the other
But
thing
your website deals with the newsletter concept.
exactly. And one other thing I'd add is we haven't done it again this year, but we regularly are committed to survey. We think that not only sending the survey, but then sharing those results is of great interest to our membership.
Do you send it to the franchisor also?
The survey?
All of it, any of your communication?
Well, we don't directly put them on our list, but we know from feedback they're getting it all. So, yeah.
Okay, got time for one more quick question, and then move to the next topic.
So that website, rolling it out at their conference, I think is a wonderful idea. Our situation, the franchisor says that they don't recognize our association, although we are listed on the FDD. Were you guys recognized the service master when you were able to do that, or how did you guys get that done?
It's my understanding, yes, and I'm certainly not the legal mind, but we worked with W. Michael Gardner's group, was the original legal fund. And so we had to both be registered with the AAFD and follow all of that. That was all done in the spring of 2015. And then in order to be recognized at the conference, there was an agreement that between our founder, Jerry Winkley, and the head counsel for Service Master, that they would negotiate everything that could and could not be said. And we agreed to do that because we were going to have thousands of prospects walk by in person. And that's why we did it. So yes, we are recognized. It doesn't mean, and then also one of the big changes that continues to happen is continual management change. As the franchisor has a management, how they allow us to work changes pretty quickly. So I hope that answered it.
So we've got stair steps, we've got mission, we've got leadership, and then marketing and communication. Gee, what happens when you get organized, get started, and then get some momentum? You have to continue, and you have to convince people to renew. Chip Rogers has a lot of experience here, and is going to bring his wisdom to bear and share with you.
We need to schedule so we're done at 10 o'clock. I'm going to try and get us back on board, okay? So I think we had some slides, but I don't have a clip. All right, so we have pillars, and I think this is critically important. If members don't know what you do and why you do it, they won't stay with you long. And if what you do and why you do it don't matter to them, they won't stay with you long. And so we stay on these four things constantly. Now, one of the great, challenges once you get to be an association of our size, or frankly, I would say any size or any business, is making decisions based on something other than data. We have 16,655 members. They all have an idea how we can do things better. They all have a story to tell. They all have anecdotes to share with us. If you get caught governing your franchise association by listening to the last guy talk to you, soon you won't be an association. You have to survey your members. Fortunately, because of the size of our association, we're able to do that. We survey all the time. So I get people coming up giving me stories everywhere I go. Now, we're a high-touch association. Last year, we hosted over 150 events for our members. So basically every other day, we're having an event, a whole event somewhere in the United States. I go to a lot of those meetings, not 150, but at least close to half of them. And you'll hear stories every day, well, you need to do this, you need to do that. Now, we take good ideas. Good ideas are something that you need to consider. But if that's how you govern your association, you're going to be in a world of hurt. So you have to stay focused. You have to use data-driven decisions, not anecdotes. Take anything from here today. Data-driven decisions, not the last complaint from the last guy. That's what we've done since 2010, a 63% increase in our membership. You can see where we were. That's coming right out of the economic downturn, and up until now, things are going exceptionally well. What's interesting is what we've had here. We have essentially two memberships if you're a hotel owner. And by the way, you have to be a hotel owner to be a member. That's the only qualification. And that's critically important. Because our interests are for the hotel owner. Not for the hotel owners like outside of being an owner, but being a hotel owner. If you're an owner, you should probably join us. There's no other association that is anywhere near our size. And I think our success has been focusing on what the owners want. We have a mission statement, which is to be the recognized voice of America's hotel owners. I think we're probably fairly close to that. But what do you do once you're the voice? What does that voice mean? How does that turn into something positive for your members? So we have kind of a sub-mission statement, which is to help our members make money, save money, and protect their investments. And everything we do, every investment we make, every event we have, we focus it on, is it doing one of those three things? Because if it's not doing one of those three things, then we're taking away from what our members expect that we do. You can get drawn a lot of different directions, again, a lot of times based on the last story that the last guy told you. But if the actions you're taking, the investments you're making, aren't there to help your money, in our case, your members make money, save money, and protect their investments, eventually you're going to lose members because they're in your association, in our case, because they're a hotel owner. Now, hotel owners have a lot of different interests. Some of them own and operate their individual hotel, and I want to be clear. We have about 80-some-odd% of our members who own franchise hotels, and we've got about 30-some-odd% of our members who are independent hoteliers. So our unifying theme is not the franchisee-franchisor relationship. Our unifying theme is hotel ownership. And it just so happens that the vast majority are franchisees. That is a critical component when we're thinking about ways to help them make money, save money, and protect their investment. But I've got a few thousand members that are also independent owners, and they're looking at their bottom line too. So we have to make sure that we stay strictly focused on those things. But what I was mentioning here, we have two memberships. Our regular membership has been going up dramatically. But this is when you're already a member and you want to become a lifetime member, which is a far more significant investment. And these numbers really tell our story recently because it's not just attracting new members, which we've been very successful at. It's taking the people that are there saying, you know what, not only am I a member, I like your association so much, I want to be a lifetime member, which is 20-some-odd times more than what it costs to be an annual member, or 18 times more. So we've seen a dramatic increase in that, getting very close to the 6,000 member mark. Oh, that's not it. So I just wanted to show you those particular slides, but the key to our success, and our success is not necessarily going to be the key to your success, but the key to our success is, number one, to have buy-in from your members, to have an involvement with your members, to have a team. When I say team, that includes my board, which we have a 34-member board. We have ambassadors, 240 ambassadors across the United States that are chosen by the board members in their regions. And then I have a staff of 30-some-odd people in Atlanta and another staff of 8 people in Washington, D.C. But if they are all not bought into this idea that we're here to work on behalf of owners to help them make money, save money, protect their investment, they're not going to, at least on the staff side, they're not going to be very, very valuable to me. One of the first things I did when I took over as president is I was committed to changing this entire culture. And our old culture was, there's nothing wrong with it, it's just not the way I could lead and not where I thought we would need to go to that next level of success. The old culture was that you are a committed staff member and that you work 8:30 to 5:30 every day and you have your hour off for lunch. So every person that I've hired, and unfortunately I had to fire some people, I said, look, we're a team. And I coach a lot of basketball, and I use this analogy all the time. If my point guard says it's not my role to rebound because I'm the point guard, the ball falls right in front of them, they don't grab the rebound because they say it's not my job, they're going to be on the bench. If you believe that being on my team says that you do what I told you in your job description, but if something else pops up, you don't do it because it's not in your job description, you're not going to be on my team any longer. If you believe that the minute you go home from work and I call you at 7:30 at night that you don't need to answer the phone, you're not going to be on my team any longer. And actually it goes a little further than that. If you believe that I call you at 9:30 on a Saturday night and you don't get back to me until Monday morning, you're probably not going to be on my team any longer. That may say harsh or sound harsh. But that's our industry. That's our hotel industry. We don't have a guest who calls up, as CK or Kesh or our other former chairman sitting in the back there, calls up and says, hey, I got a problem with a towel, or I need some towels. You don't say, well, we'll get to that on Monday. I mean, that's not the way it works. So my team's not allowed to work that way either. But the flip side of that, in building that team, is to say, look, if you got, and I live in Atlanta, I don't know how many of you have been in and around Atlanta, particularly in the last 2 months since the bridge collapsed. Traffic is insane, almost as bad as Los Angeles. And so I tell all my team, look, if you've got to schedule your life around getting here and not sitting in traffic for, sometimes I live 19 miles from my office, it take an hour and 45 minutes. So if you need to schedule do it. If you've got issues with your kids, take care of it. Whatever you need to do in your life to make sure that you're happy here and that you're working together for this mission, then do it. Now, I know all that sounds like staff management, but I want to tell you it's a critically important component of this. Because I've got to get them to buy in to what we're doing. Right? And for me to get them to buy into what we're doing, I can't have them worrying about, I got to be here at 8:30, leave at 5:30. Their focus needs to be, this is the task at hand that we've got to achieve. And when I can get all of them on that same page, and when our board does a fantastic job with that, and our ambassadors do a fantastic job with that, when all that begins to come together, they see the goal at the end of the tunnel, right? The light at the end of the tunnel, which is the goal. These other little things that tend to get in your way soon just fall by the wayside. I'll give you one quick story of a great success we had over the last 2 years to show you just how bought in they are. And I use that term a lot, bought in. But if you don't have that, you're just not going to be successful. A couple of years ago, well, starting about 5 years ago, one of our pillars is advocacy. In fact, it might be our most important pillar. Because we recognize now where we are in the industry. We are, if not a leader, the leader in the industry. And we have a responsibility to advocate on behalf of our members as elected officials all across the country. It's probably not shocking to you that politicians come up with, and I'm a recovering politician, I know this, come up with a lot of stupid ideas that impact small business. And particularly the hotel business gets targeted a lot, especially when you start talking about occupancy taxes and other things. But we brought this idea of how important advocacy was to our members. Now, our members prior to that probably didn't engage that much in the advocacy world in Washington, D.C., or even in their hometown or anything like that. We slowly built that up over the last few years, and then about 2 years ago we said, look, we are a leader in this industry. We have a responsibility. We need to make sure that people are getting elected that understand what it means to run a small business. Because that's one of the greatest threats to your business, or all these politicians, especially in this particular state, which they come up with the most insane ideas I've ever heard. But all these politicians have never signed in front of a paycheck. They have no idea how businesses run. So we spent about 3 years convincing our membership this is really important, and they responded fantastic. We have 2 large gatherings in Washington, D.C. Every year with our members, hundreds and hundreds of our members that go, and Keith is there with us every time. He can tell you, we hit almost every door on Capitol Hill. But last year, or 2 years ago, we said, we also got to raise money. We can't just be here, that's important, but we got to raise money. So we set out to raise $1 million in PAC in one cycle from our members. And this is all real dollars. These are all personal donations. It can't come from any corporate money. I'm proud to say in the last election cycle, we raised $1.13 million. The first, well, we were in the second, because AHLA, which is also the American Hotel and Lodging Association, they and us became the first lodging associations ever to raise over $1 million in PAC in one cycle. I tell you that story because it is perhaps the greatest success story of the buy-in that I'm talking about. We spent 3 years convincing them this is important. These decisions are we all started this when Obamacare hit to begin with. Said, look, this is going to really, 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 really impact your bottom line. You start getting woken up. Then we say, here's what we need to do to engage. And we finally say, here's what you need to do to invest. And getting people to write personal checks to the tune of $1.13 million that's quite a lot of work. We were able to accomplish that, and now people are completely bought in. So when we say, I need 20,000 emails to go to Congress, we get it. When I say, I need 100 people to show up at the state capitol in Texas, I get 200. When I say in California here, 3 years ago, I'm on the CHNLA board, 3 years ago, I went to our annual day here on Capitol Hill in Sacramento, and I spoke to the group, and I said, how many people in here are HOA members? We had one table in the back of a room of about 200 people that raised their hand. Kev is here this year, he can tell you, I said the exact same thing. How many people here are HOA members? Over half the room now are HOA members. They've completely bought in because they understand that collectively, if we're not all working together, this is just not going to work. We can have an association all day, right? We can put up logos and names and send out emails and all that stuff. But if you don't have people that are actively engaged and bought into the idea that the success of the association means the success of their individual business, then it's just not going to work over a long time. And that's how we get these numbers. That's how we grow that much in that short period of time. Glad to take any questions.
So, Chip, one of the ongoing things with an association, of course, is getting other people to volunteer for leadership. And of course, the HOA has been very successful with that because they have continuum. And
just so I need a mic. One of the geniuses, and I'm not even sure how it happened, is that you hold your elections for officers at the end of your convention, right before the final night event. And I don't know if people have ever really thought about that, but every association has trouble finding new leaders, right? Some of us get stuck there forever, it seems like. And yet you don't. And I jokingly call it, you guys have a good sport, it's called the election cycle of the convention. But I think people ought to look at that model and consider that. I don't know if anybody else does their election cycle for officers actually at their annual event, because it makes it a huge deal. And you seem to always have leaders stepping up, and you always have participation, because then the rest of us, our associations, you look at how many people voted in an election cycle for officers or board members, it's almost nothing. So anyway, I don't know how that came about. I mean, it was before your time, I know there, but it's kind of a genius part of it.
Yeah, I wish I could take credit for it. But, look, I am extremely blessed because I get to lead an association with very deep membership. About half of our members now are second generation hoteliers and Americans, and then about half are first generation hoteliers and Americans. And I tell people all the time, and I talk to my friends in Congress, if you actually want to see the embodiment of the American dream in action right now today, first thing is turn off the TV. Second thing, just talk to some of my members. It is an amazing story of a group of people who came here, language barriers, financial barriers, political barriers, cultural barriers, and in a generation went from owning virtually almost, well, from the late 1960s until now, owning almost no hotels, to owning almost half the hotels in the United States. Now, how did that happen? Not once have my members come say, go to Washington, D.C. and see if you can get a special carve out for us. Go figure out how you can get some sort of special benefit for us. It's the exact opposite. It's like, get government out of my way, I will make this work. And they've made it work in an amazing fashion. Now, I say that to lead up to your point, and that is, being part of our association is a really big deal. And it should be, because you have all these incredible entrepreneurs who built these great businesses and really changed the industry. And there's people that want to be a part of leadership of that. And to Keith's point, if you've never been to one of our conventions, you're all welcome. We're going to be in Washington, D.C. next March. We just finished in San Antonio. We had 6,700 people show up. In our elections for our number one spot for secretary, we have members who, they literally run political campaigns. Six-figure expenditures to run a campaign out of their own pocket to be one of our elected officers. This is not uncommon. But when I talk to Moen about buy-in, that's buy-in, right? Keith, he keeps being the chairman every year, but he didn't have to. There's not a lot of people saying, hey, I want to take your spot, right? These are highly competitive races, and they happen at a convention, which of course almost has a political convention feel to it, which really gets people energized. And then you have, a lot of people in the crowd say, hey, I want to do that next year. So I wasn't a genius that came over with it, and I'm not a genius in any respect, but whoever did it was a brilliant move.
Paid positions? Are they spending that money for paid positions or just for volunteer positions?
100% volunteer.
Wow.
Yeah, I was actually going to make a couple of comments. It is a 100% volunteer position on the entire board. To Chip's point, I just want to, as he's a recovering politician, there must be an association of Politicians Anonymous. The 1.13 that we raised, what was the end result in the national election of the people? I don't know the statistics. Can you just mention that?
Yeah, so and this is part of the buy-in too. People are going to write a check out of their own pocket. They wonder, how does this money actually being spent? And for those who don't have a PAC, just so you know, again, it has to be all individual money, no corporate money, and that every penny has to go towards campaigns. And so we spend every penny towards campaigns. There's no zero overhead. We're not allowed legally to do that. But we also go through a very strict selection process so that they know that money's going to the right candidate. So we have about 8 criteria, and any time that a member of Congress or someone from in our association suggests a member of Congress receive a donation, they got to go through a scoring criteria, and at the end of that criteria, we determine whether they're worthy of receiving a check or not. And it does nothing in that criteria that says Democrat or Republican or independent. It says, are you or have you been a small business owner? Where are you as far as the hierarchy if you're an incumbent in Congress? Are you in leadership or did you just start? Are you in the majority or in the minority? Are you a chair or are you not a chair? Most importantly, what is your voting rate? That's second most important. What's your voting rate? Most important is, do they even have a chance to win, right? And so we look at tons of polling data to determine whether the person we're investing in even has an opportunity to win. Because I could take the greatest candidate of all time, but if he or she loses, I just wasted my money. So the last 2 election cycles, we've actually been identical on both of ours, and we give to hundreds of candidates. 2 election cycles ago, we scored it. We were 94% of our candidates were victorious. In this election cycle, the exact same thing, 94%. So I think we do a really good job of making sure that we're focusing those resources on the people that we believe are going to be beneficial to small business and beneficial to the hotel industry. And it's been quite successful. And when our members look at that, we go back to them and say, hey, I need you to write another check. And we can point to 94% approval or 94% success rate. It makes our job a lot easier.
Chip, one last question.
Chip, I wonder if you or any other of the panel can sort of wrap all this up for us by connecting the dots from where we started in terms of starting out to where you guys have gotten. Because one of the things that I always am talking to, particularly prospective association members and franchisees, is the point that you're making, which is there needs to be a value add, at least one. And that, to me, needs to be talked about by the founders of the association, maybe before you incorporate. Because, in fact, Bob's earlier point about there's a single issue that's driving everybody. The franchisor's done something that the natives want to go out and burn down the castle. Either the castle gets burned down or it doesn't, but there has to be more after that. You guys have done such a spectacular job. I wonder if you guys could sort of just tie this together in terms of what the value adds can be, when they should start being talked about, how you find out what your members or prospective members really want as your value adds, how do you pay for those value adds. I mean, to me, that's the biggest challenge of the long-term associations, to move from the formation period where we've got the greatest thinkers, guys like David who are afraid to go out and do this, and we come up with a flexible mission statement, to 5 years later we're still around and still relevant. And that might be too big of a question for 2 minutes left, but to me that is the challenge that we all face as we do this.
Great question, and I have permission to go 5 minutes extra, so that's about 1.5 minutes each for you guys to address that.
I'll yield the balance of my time to the other 3. I'll use 30 seconds of it to say that the initial point is exactly right. The formation of the association is based on a single issue or a single fight. Someday that issue goes away, someday that fight goes away, and then what's the purpose of the association? So that's why you're forming it, and you either transform it into something that matters long term, or you just figure out it's not going to work.
I think, Ron, that you need to come to meetings like this and hear from successful associations like Chip just described. And as a young association starting out, you need to look to what can be accomplished, understand that. And I think what you need to do is take baby steps. You can't get to the AAHOA level in a short time, and you may never get there. So what you need to do is be realistic about what you can accomplish based on your size and your resources. And you need to set goals on on an annual basis, and pick 2 or 3 items and accomplish that, and focus on how that's bringing value to your membership, and communicate that to your membership, and all the pointers that we heard during this session, and I'm sure throughout this conference. You just need to be realistic, but keep all these good points in mind.
Ron, I think as all the members shared, there was some of the elements of that answer already shared. Certainly, Robert, you talked about making sure that members can learn from each other, making sure that you can consider not just collective bargaining, but collective buying. And ultimately, I have just one to add. Ultimately, Chip, when you're worried about whether every single issue you take on is going to impact your members, either the bottom line or the long-term value of your investment and so forth, I think everything Service Master is doing today is very focused on that. And maybe one area we haven't talked about is your ability to get sponsors. That's another thing the association did right in the beginning, is they realized that gathering the base very quickly would mean that the vendors that they were all dedicated to, their suppliers for all different things, would be willing to chip in sponsor dollars for the actual franchisee association. And we're only at the beginning of that, but we've been very successful with that. I also represent some associations outside of the franchise world, and we've been amazed what sponsors are willing to do just to have access to those members. So it's one more way you can fund your initiatives.
So Ron, I probably don't have any answers to that question. You know, we're kind of figuring this out as we go. However, I'll share some thoughts with you. One of the things that we've done really from the get-go is, you know, and I have like many records of this, we have reached out collaboratively, we have tried to speak collaboratively with the franchisor, we, you know, are focusing on the value that we can provide. And, you know, full disclosure, we did start due to a major issue. But we did realize early on that we'd have to carry on, you know, beyond that issue. And I think part of what the board has to do, part of what the leadership of the association has to do, we have to balance, you know, the people that are saber rattling and want to be off with their heads, with the people that want to do nothing. You know, we have to have a moderate path down the middle to get stuff done. And I'll also share with you, you know, I think I'm maybe 4 pages of notes up here now. That's one of the reasons I like doing things like this. We're going to, where I'm going to start the process anyways, I'm really working on our mission statement as an association. You know, based on a lot of what Bob said earlier, you know, we need to really, and some of your comments, you know, we need to really work on that mission, you know, so that we have the long-term impact that we want to have. And I'm also very excited, Chip, I actually live in Atlanta as well. And in all my spare time, I think I'm going to apply for an internship at HOA, so I can maybe learn, you know, how to do this when we grow up.
So I want to thank the panelists for making my job as moderator an easy and a fun one. I want to thank Jan for Ideology sponsoring this session. And I want to tell you how important the topic is that we're dealing with. And I'll call attention to Robert's closing statement that it's about baby steps. So after Bob Perman comes to do the door prize drawing, and after you take a break, the baby steps begin, because the next session is a continuation of this. It's a drill down on the basics. Association nuts and bolts. Recruiting, retaining, involving members, funding, benefits, and keeping your association thriving. That group of panelists will do the deep dive on the subjects that this group talked about from a 10,000 foot level. So thank you very much, and thank you for